In the last step, we talked about Spring Boot startup projects. In this step, let's look at Spring Boot auto configuration. Typically, whenever you want to build a web application with Spring Boot, you need a lot of configuration. You need to configure component scan, dispatcher servlet. If you want to talk to a database, you need to configure a data source. You need to configure conversion from Bean to JSON, JSON to Bean. So there are a lot of things that you need to configure to build a typical Spring application. How can I simplify this? That's the concept of auto configuration. Automated configuration for your application. How is this generated? The automatic configuration is generated based on which frameworks are in the class path. In the pom.xml, we can add in a lot of starter projects, and these bring in a lot of frameworks. So depending on the frameworks which are present in the class path, we can auto configure a lot of things. The other factor is what is the existing configuration. Spring Boot provides default auto configuration. However, you can also override that by providing your own configuration. So a combination of these two things is what is used to determine auto configuration. What frameworks or what classes are in the class path, and what is the existing configuration that you have provided. Now, where is all the auto configuration logic defined? All the auto configuration logic is defined in a specific jar, which you would be able to see in your Maven dependencies. It's called Spring Boot autoconfigure.jar. If you go in here, you would see a number of auto configuration classes which are present in here. If you scroll down, you should see a package or Spring Framework Boot Auto Configure Web. All the auto configuration related to developing web applications and REST API is configured in this package and its sub packages. Now, if you want to understand auto configuration further, what you can do is to open up application.properties. So where is application.properties present? It's in the source main resources. If you go to source main resources, you have application.properties. You can go to application.properties and configure logging level. So I'll say logging.level.org.spring-framework is equal to debug. What we are saying is, for this particular package, org.spring-framework, we would want to log at debug level. So we are changing the logging level for org.spring-framework. I'll save this, and for us to pick the change, I'll need to stop the server and start the server up again. So learn Spring Boot application, I'm launching it up again. And now you would see that there is a lot more log. The default logging level is info, and info prints very, very less information. However, when we changed it to debug, you would see that there is a lot of information which is printed in. If you look at the logs in depth, you would see that there is something called conditions evaluation report. In there are positive matches and there are negative matches. Negative matches are things which did not get auto configured. Positive matches are the things which were auto configured for you. A dispatcher servlet was auto configured for you. You can see that an error page is auto configured for you. You can see that Tomcat was auto configured for you. So all this auto configuration is based on the code which we see in this specific jar, Spring Boot autoconfigure.jar. Let's pick up one of the classes from there. Let's look at dispatcher servlet auto configuration. Command Shift T or Control Shift T, you can open the class up. Dispatcher servlet auto configuration. If I click this icon which is present in here, you can see the dispatcher servlet auto configuration.class in here. Where is it present? Yep, you are right. Spring Boot auto configure.jar. This is where it is present. And over here, you can see configuration of when this specific auto configuration is enabled. So this is enabled for a web application or a REST API. And this is enabled when there is something called dispatcher servlet in the class path. Because we included Spring Web Starter, dispatcher servlet is already on the class path, and therefore the dispatcher servlet is auto configured for us. If you scroll a little down, there is something called error MVC auto configuration. Let's launch it up. Command Shift T or Control Shift T, error MVC auto configuration. Let's open it up. And this is the thing which is configuring a default error page. Now, what's a default error page? Earlier, when we typed in the URL localhost 8080 courses, we get the proper response back. However, let's say I type in a URL which we have not mapped anything to. For example, I'll say courses/10 and press enter. You'd see that you get a white label error page. It's saying not found. This page is not found. The status is 404. So the application is able to understand the fact that the URL is not mapped, and it's able to provide a good error message back to the user. How is this happening? The reason it is happening is because of the error MVC auto configuration class. Spring Boot automatically configures an error page for you. Now, if I actually take this white label error thing, now if I go in here, copy this and search for it in here, you would see that white label error page is coming in from here. This is auto configured for us by Spring Boot auto configuration. So what we are looking at is the fact that Spring Boot auto configures a lot of things for you based on the frameworks which are present in the class path. A good example is Spring Boot Starter Web. When you are using Spring Boot Starter Web, all these things are automatically auto-configured for you. A dispatcher servlet, an embedded servlet container. We would want to use Tomcat to run our application. So by default, Tomcat is auto-configured. Default error pages are auto-configured for you. And also, we saw that JSON conversion is auto-configured for you. The JSON conversion is done by a framework called Jackson. Spring Boot auto configuration, when you have Spring Boot Starter Web on the class path, would automatically provide a message converter from Bean to JSON. And that's the reason why when we were returning a Bean, an array list from our method, it was automatically converted out to JSON. This magic is happening because of the Jackson HTTP message converters configuration. In this step, we looked at Spring Boot auto configuration. In the last step, we understood the fact that Spring Boot starter projects bring in a lot of dependencies. And Spring Boot auto configuration would look at the dependencies, look at the jars, classes, and it would provide automatic configuration for your application. All the logic for Spring Boot auto configuration is present in a jar file called springboot autoconfigure.jar. I'm sure you're having a wonderful time, and I'll see you in the next step.